Welcome back to Squawk Box. President Trump will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House today. The focus is expected to be on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Joining us right now for more on all of it, Dan Senor. He's the former policy advisor in the Bush administration and host of the podcast Call Me Back. What do you think is going to happen today? What do you think's really? Where are the fault lines in this conversation?
I think that what we are going to see this week is how much is possible once the biggest threat to all U.S. allies and U.S. interests in the Middle East is severely weakened, which is Iran. Up until now, there was this ring of fire around Israel, this what we call the Seven Front War. There was pressure on the Gulf states, the Sunni Gulf states in the region. There was pressure on the U.S. There was pressure on international shipping. We all know all of this. The head of the snake was Iran. And for the first time, people have been talking for decades. President Trump has been talking about it now for about a decade. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been talking about it for almost 4 decades, that until you deal with Iran, you can't deal with the region. This is the first time since at least I've been following Middle East affairs that Iran is really severely on its back foot, and then opportunities open up. So what could those opportunities be? First of all, a possible ceasefire deal. I do think we're going to make Israel and its mediators that are right now negotiating in Doha are going to make real progress on that. I don't know if they'll be able to announce it this week, but I think, because I think there's some important details still being worked out. But
what do you think those details are that are at odds?
What is clear that there's real movement on is the possibility for some kind of ceasefire for about 60 days, in which Israel would get back 10 living hostages, approximately, and somewhere in the range of 18 of the deceased hostages that were killed, the bodies. And then the question is, and then some Palestinian prisoners would be released from Israeli prisons. Then the question is, what obligations will Israel have in the deal to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, and whether or not this is going to be on a path towards the conflict actually ending, the war ending. Israel's actually committing in this 60-day process. At the end of the process, they're going to be on a path to ending the war. And then what Netanyahu said before he left Israel yesterday is, if that's the case, Hamas cannot remain in power. So that is like the big issue, and I think they're negotiating that, and that Hamas is looking for some kind of commitment from Trump that if they begin this process and it's a phased release, some hostages get released, that it actually continues and it just doesn't stall before they get to the end of the ceasefire. So, but I want to say, I also think look out for news about normalization between Israel and some other country in the region. I think we are going to see. I don't think it's going to be Saudi. No, it won't be Saudi yet. I think keep an eye on Syria. Okay. I think we're going to. I think the Abraham Accords now are going to get new life. The first time they've gotten real life since they were originally signed in 2020, where new parties will be coming in, partly because the region is now not living under this hegemon. There's possible hegemon, which was Iran.
October 7th was a reaction to that and trying to prevent Saudi Arabia from coming in. What's the reaction to more countries coming in? Does it push through at this point?
Yeah, I think that if you're Dan Senor, the architect of October 7th, on October 6th, if you had told him the night before the operation that you're going to launch this war against Israel, and in less than 2 years, Iran's entire proxy system in the region that Iran had been investing years and billions of dollars in is going to be collapsed. Hamas largely wiped out, Hezbollah totally wiped out, the Assad regime, which was a proxy state of Iran's, had been in power for 53 years, collapsed. Houthis still a nuisance, but not like this persistent threat. These militias in Iraq and elsewhere in the region severely weakened. I think Senor would have been told, stand down. He would have been told by Tehran, don't do it.
So tell me,
it's not worth it. And by the way, at the end of this process, more countries will be normalizing with Israel, not fewer. And Saudi Arabia, I don't think Saudi Arabia is imminent, but I think the direction of travel is only going in one direction, which is I think Saudi and Israel are ultimately going to normalize.
What do you know or assume about the capability of Iran to build a nuclear weapon? How long?
So nobody knows. I don't believe anybody truly knows.
Probably not months. It's at least years.
I think it's years, just based on the following.
Why don't you know more? You've got contacts with everybody in Israel. Doesn't the Mossad know? Not that you would know automatically, but
let me explain. I think that if you look at what the inputs that go into building a nuclear bomb, right? You need the expertise, the nuclear scientists. Right. You need the infrastructure. You need the facilities, Fordo, and then you need the ingredients, the enriched uranium, the highly enriched uranium. We know many, not all, but many of the scientists in Israel have been killed, so the knowledge has been systematically wiped out. We know the infrastructure has been decimated. The question is some of the ingredients, like this highly enriched uranium.
We know the infrastructure was decimated.
Yes.
Because we hear obliterated or...
Yeah, the infrastructure was. The question is, did they get out some 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium and move it somewhere else?
But you think that the buildings 300 feet down were destroyed?
Yeah, I mean, to the point that they can't be used anytime soon. And keep in mind, the centrifuges in those facilities that are used to enrich the uranium are highly, highly fragile. They're highly delicate. Yeah. Every nuclear physicist you talk to says they are susceptible to the least bit of vibration. The moment they are subject to a little bit of vibration, when people walk into these facilities, they're like on tippy toes because they don't want to damage these things. The idea that you drop what was the equivalent, the U.S. dropped what was the equivalent of like a third of what it dropped on Hiroshima. I'm not exaggerating. I think let's just say there's probably a little bit of vibration.